We'll get into that here in a little bit. But Allie, you wanted to share an interesting piece that you found over at CopBlock, was it?
Well, CopBlock posted it, but the piece is from stopthestate.blogspot.com, and it's Austin White's blog.
All right.
So the article is called, "Is it the lawmakers or law enforcers who are to blame?"
I'm going to say it is, well, to some extent both, but I think ultimately the law enforcers are the ones that are to blame.
Mark?
I think it's the lawmakers. I mean, they're the ones that give the orders, and they're the ones that cut the paychecks.
The cops don't have to enforce them.
Yeah, well, whatever.
So proponents of individual liberty, this is me, not him, are excellent when it comes to identifying victims, but when it comes to because, when someone's aggressed against, it's like, obviously, if they're being peaceful, then they're the victim. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes when it's like, well, whose fault is it? People often say, oh, it's the law's fault and the people that made the law. So as I guess maybe Mark would claim, is this correct? I
think that's, to me, it's the people. It's perception, and perception is a responsibility of the person who perceives. So it is I've seen the enemy, and it are us. It's in fact the individuals out there, the 99 point whatever % of the population that believe that for whatever reason that a single monopolistic organization can claim the right to use violence in a given geographic area.
That's a great point, Mark.
To the
it is ultimately
of all others.
Yeah, it is a great point that ultimately everyone is to blame, because what we're seeing is just a manifestation of the collective beliefs of the people in any given area.
And those same people hold the same dichotomous and paradoxical belief that, for instance, the founding fathers who picked up arms against their monolithic and monopolistic state organization and fought back are right for having done so. But people who would do so now are not.
Well, let's hear what Austin White has to say. He says, Walter Block has a very interesting defense of the inciter of a riot. The act of advocating violence is not a violent act and directly harms no one. Therefore, the inciter should not be held responsible for any chaos that ensues from his words. It is the fools who listen to and carry out the inciter's wishes who should be held responsible. They were completely free to reject the inciter's evil suggestions to loot and destroy, but instead voluntarily choose to do evil. He says that the reasons why people often make excuses for the violence, the doers of violence are usually have a friend or a cop, because there's more and more cops and soldiers now than ever before in the United States. So now they're just making excuses for them because they know someone in a relationship with them. They don't want to lose that relationship and blame them for the violence that erupts from the state. So,
well, and also what you need to consider is everybody sitting at this table and everybody listening to my voice at one point believed this. They had not yet taken a peek behind the curtain and seen that that the great Oz is in fact a little hustler from Poughkeepsie. Is that where Oz was from?
I don't.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
You.
Well, he makes a point that they tone down their libertarianism to make the philosophy appear more attractive to police and military men, knowing that the philosophy, unadulterated, condemns those chosen careers.
I think for the most part that's a true statement, but police can be, well, I guess it's not really true. Once you get past the training phase as a police officer, you have more leeway with what you can and can't get away with. So, for instance, if you're out on your own in a squad car, you can ignore someone who's speeding if you want to. You can ignore someone who's got marijuana in their car if you want to. And those cops do exist. So I think that some cops can adhere more so, or do adhere more so than others to the ideals of liberty. But obviously when they're under orders or they're being observed by some sort of a superior, they may change their behavior in order to keep their jobs. So ultimately they probably have to violate the non-aggression principle in order to do their jobs, but some violate it less than others.
Right. Well, as he points out, it's not the legislators kicking down doors and pointing guns at families during drug raids, pulling people over and taking hundreds of dollars for their minor traffic offenses, and locking up people for years of marijuana possession. So I agree with him. I don't think in a free society, there's probably going to still be people that try to incite violence. It's possible, but
of course.
it's dependent on liberty's dependent on whether or not people listen to those people. We can't keep those people. We can't restrict their free speech and say no. You can't try to advocate for violence, because who cares if they're advocating violence if no one listens
no one does
to
it.
them?
Well, so this is the Gordian knot. Do you know what a Gordian knot is?
Tell me, Mark.
Do you know what a Gordian knot is?
I've heard of it before, but I couldn't tell you what it is.
Alexander the Great went to someplace. Let's call it Gordia. I think it was actually King Midas. What did he rule over?
Couldn't tell you.
Minotaur, Crete. I'm not sure. Anyway,
Was he real? I don't know he was real. Midas.
Who knows?
I heard his touch turned things to gold that made me not believe he was real.
Yeah, I'm thinking. We don't even know if the Gordian knot story is true either. But it was a knot that was so difficult that
not even a Boy Scout could undo it.
I guess the idea was that Alexander the Great would be the ruler of some place if he untied the knot. He took out his sword and cleaved it rather than attempting to undo it.
Very sharp.
There you go.
Did that get him the prize?
Well, I mean, he's going to kill everybody anyway. So sure. I mean, that's what Alexander the Great did.
Gotcha.
But the Gordian knot here is, as a police officer, for one, a lot of these guys believe that drugs are bad, and they provide a service that would be that the people want. I mean, I want police officers to go get bank robbers and rapists and murderers, and I want them to get them off the street.
Sure.
You agree?
Who doesn't agree with
Awesome. So, in the process, so they believe that drug users are aggressing in the same way that those folks are aggressing, and this is my job.
Do they really believe that, though? Do they honestly believe that? I mean, I know that there are some really dumb cops out there, but I just don't see. I think when you're committing an act of aggression, it is, as much denial as you want to be about it. I think it's sort of impossible for your conscience to surpass.
So can I argue for the police on this one? I'll take the devil's advocate position on this. The police officer who would suggest that drug use has a victim or is aggressive in some way would basically say that society is the victim.
Well, right, but.
Or your family is the victim. But
we're saying that society is to blame for the aggression of a couple people. A cop goes and points a gun at someone when they've been completely peaceful, and we say it's society's fault for thinking that the cop's in the right. No, the cop is the one in the wrong. And if society stopped blaming the lawmakers and started blaming the actual aggressors, then the aggressors would have some kind of social stigma attached to what they're doing.
I agree. I think it's important
there is some kind of social stigma attached to what police are doing, because all you have to do is listen to them. They're as bad as the Christians as far as being subjugated and treated poorly and all that stuff. I mean, you've never heard of a group of people that have been treated worse than cops if you listen to cops.
Right. And, a lot of people don't like cops for good reason. But their position essentially when it comes to drug users is that, well, the drug user is hurting their family by hurting themselves, or they're hurting their employer, or they're hurting the society at large, and so therefore it's aggressive, and therefore there are victims, and they need to be put in a jail cell.
Also, I didn't get to finish my point here. If that cop stands up for what you believe is right, and remember, we're just talking about beliefs here. I think that we can make good cases for our beliefs, but they're still just beliefs. If they stand up for what you believe is right, they're going to lose their job.
So I don't know if that's always true.
Yes, it is. If they said I'm not arresting any peaceful people anymore.
It's what they're afraid of. I don't know if it's true. There's more coming up. 855-450-FREE. They're scared. 855-450-FREE. We're going to go and continue here with your phone calls. Also, we'll get back to some more of what Allie brought in to talk about here tonight. Who's to blame? The lawmakers, the legislators, or maybe it's neither. Maybe it's everyone. Maybe everyone's to blame for the way things are today. But we'll get your thoughts as well. Let's go to Chris listening in Alabama in the Huntsville area. Chris, you're on Free Talk Live.
Thank you. Very good show. I like your topics.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm a former police officer, and I'm kind of relating to what had been said, with your peers and with your superiors close by you, a lot of times it is hard to, if you're kind of a freedom lover or in the libertarian mode even, it's hard to do that and enforce the law to their standards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, solo, at one time I was a park ranger, and all of the marijuana, beer that I let go right now would probably come up to my waist in my shop.
Very good.
Now,
thank you for that, Chris.
Well, hey, if there's a public safety, for instance, a drunk behind the wheel, they're just as dangerous as a guy with an AK unloading on everybody. Sure, safety. I'm not going to let him drive away.
2-ton guided missile.
Yes, but a guy rolling a joint, obviously not so screwed up he can't maneuver. It's like, dude, get out of my park and take it out. I don't want to see you here for a few weeks. There's no reason to ruin his life and get him a booking number and cost him a few thousands over a joint.
Man, I wish there were more cops like you, Chris. Why did you leave? You just retired?
Actually, no. I went into another business. In fact, I'm competing with one of your advertisers, so I'd rather not say what I did.
Fair enough.
Need to support the advertisers. But nonetheless, I went into business for myself and haven't looked back. Another thing, too, like who's at fault? One thing, who I look at at fault, here locally, I call them the Alabama Taliban. It's our public that demands these roadblocks. These, I feel unconstitutional and immoral roadblocks. They want to see the drug arrest. They want to see the drunk arrest. Show your papers before you could proceed. That's what a roadblock is.
Right.
And so they want to see it. They demand it of our legislatures. We're the people who put the legislature in. We're the people who vote for any elected official. So ultimately, we're to blame for the government we get.
I think that's overall a true statement. Now, Allie, you're from Alabama. Are you familiar with these people?
I am from Alabama, and I did meet a couple people who would make excuses left and right for the kind of tyranny that happens, especially in Alabama. But see, I just don't think that. I think that's the whole problem with the state. It's this idea that allows people to think that. Say you have some kind of a vendetta against this group. You don't like this group of people for whatever reason. Even though, if that's me, I'm not going to be willing to go in there with guns and raid their houses. If I see the cops doing it and I'm a statist, maybe I don't mind seeing that happen because, good for society. Those people need to get raided, but I wouldn't do that on my own. So I think the state allows people to cheer on things that they would never have the guts or the moral decrepitness to do themselves. Yeah,
it encourages oppression. It encourages people to crush different interest groups and then constantly fight over who will control the violence of the state. It
allows the forcers to divert to the higher ups and say, "Oh, they told me to do it," but no, they're the ones aggressing.
So, Chris, as you said, if you were in the presence of a superior officer in the police department, it would be much more difficult for you to use your discretion in those instances. And if you did, what kind of punishment would have awaited you?
Suspension, firing, a good dressing down. Though you wouldn't be able to be trusted by your peers, for instance.
Would you be able to say no? Like, let's say they told you, Chris, we want to put you on the drug task force. Would you be able to say, no, that's all right, I'd rather not?
Well, I was on a drug task force, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And, since I call myself a recovering police officer, I got a good thing to say about our local sheriff's department here in a second. But, no, I worked at a rather large airport as an airport police officer. And, yes, part of my job was drug interdiction. And that's kind of where, some of the tactics, some of the things we did, bothering otherwise peaceful people, just wanting to get from point A to point B, kind of, woke me up, turned me around a little bit.
So it was doing that job where it dawned on you. That's interesting. I'm curious, did you ever join or have you joined Law Enforcement Against Prohibition? Or have you heard of them?
No, I haven't. I've heard y'all mention it a few times on the air.
Do you have internet access?
Yes, sir.
Drop into leap.cc, L-E-A-P, as in Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, leap.cc. That's their website, and it's a group of former mostly former, there's a handful of active cops, but mostly former law enforcement officers from various different places, even from like the DEA, who have now come around to the same position you have, and that is that peaceful people should be left alone, basically. I mean, that's the essence of their position. They support legalization as opposed to decriminalization, so I have a few minor nitpicks with the organization, but it's a great group for the most part that does a lot of good work speaking to like community groups and getting radio interviews.